How do you rob a bank and still walk away without getting caught? A man dressed like a house painter casually strolls into the main lobby of the bank. He drops his tool bag on the floor and places two oversized flashlights on the counter. Strangely, nobody pays any attention to him. The man stays completely calm. He points one flashlight directly at a security camera, then aims the second one at another camera. One by one, he disables every Panasonic surveillance camera in the building. Meanwhile, outside the bank, his three accomplices are also dressed as painters. Carrying all the tools they need, the three men calmly enter the bank together. Moments later, they lock the front doors from the inside. The security guard immediately senses something is wrong. Just as he is about to ask questions, the man presses a handgun against his back. Everybody on your knees. Move. Get down now. I count to 4. And if you don't listen, you're dead. Step away from the counters. Don't touch the alarm. Hands on the floor. In less than 5 minutes, the 4 robbers completely take control of the bank. Customers, employees, everyone inside is instantly turned into a hostage. At that moment, panic spreads across the entire building. The only thing the hostages can do is obey every order. Not long after, a police officer passing by notices white smoke coming from the bank. Just as he reaches for his phone to call for backup, the front door suddenly opens. The man sticks his handgun outside and warns the officer that he is holding dozens of hostages inside. If any cop tries to rush the building, he'll kill every single one of them. After delivering the threat, he calmly walks back inside and locks the door again. From that point on, the situation is completely in the hands of the police outside. The first phase of the robbers' perfect plan is officially a success. Soon after, dozens of police officers surround the bank. Barricades are quickly set up around the area. SWAT teams, patrol officers, and heavily armed tactical units arrive fully prepared for combat. The scene looks like a small-scale war is about to break out. The chairman of Manhattan Trust Bank is also informed about the robbery. Money means nothing to him, but Branch 32 holds a very special significance. Keith, a skilled hostage negotiator, quickly arrives at the scene alongside his partner. At this point, nobody knows exactly what is happening inside the bank. How many robbers are there? How many hostages are trapped inside? The police can only lock down the area and wait for the robbers to contact them. Based on experience, every bank robbery eventually leads to negotiations. If the robbers want to escape alive, talking to the police is unavoidable. Inside the bank, the robbers order all the hostages to gather near the vault. Bank employees stand on one side while customers stand on the other. Then the robbers begin collecting everyone's cell phones one by one. Finally, it's the last hostage's turn. A man named Peter claims he didn't bring his phone today. But there is no way the robbers are buying such an obvious lie. The ringleader gives Peter one last chance and warns him to stop lying. But Peter stubbornly insists that he really did leave his cell phone at home. The leader then grabs several phones from the bank employees and starts scrolling through their contact lists one by one. Before long, he finds Peter's number saved in another phone. Seconds later, everyone inside hears a ringtone going off. At that moment, Peter's heart completely sinks. The ringleader tracks the phone to a back room, drags Peter inside, and makes an example out of him to intimidate the other hostages. After witnessing this, nobody else dares to try anything suspicious again. Next, the robbers reorganize everyone inside the bank. Men on one side, women on the other. Once everybody is lined up, the leader orders them all to strip off their clothes. One elderly woman can't tolerate the humiliation. She would rather die than cooperate. The ringleader doesn't waste any words. He orders one of his men to drag her away. The remaining hostages are then handed identical jumpsuits and masks. With that single move, every person inside the bank suddenly looks exactly like a robber. Among the hostages is an elderly man with a heart condition. The ringleader doesn't want anyone dying this early in the plan, so he throws the old man out of the bank. After all, he still has dozens of hostages left. One less person means nothing to him. Outside, the police immediately secure the terrified old man. Meanwhile, inside the bank, the 4 robbers change into matching outfits of their own. They glance toward the vault before heading into a storage room. The structure of this room is practically perfect for what they have planned. At the same time, Arthur Case contacts Madeline White. Madeline is an extremely ruthless fixer, a woman willing to do absolutely anything for money. Arthur's request is simple. Hidden somewhere inside the bank is a secret that can never be exposed. Neither the police nor the robbers can be allowed to find it. Because of that, Arthur is willing to spend millions of dollars if Madeline can recover the item for him. And if the robbers end up dead before the police discover anything, even better. However, Madeline insists on being directly involved at the scene so she can monitor the situation herself. Without hesitation, she accepts the deal immediately. In her mind, there is no problem in the world that money can't solve. And if money fails, it simply means the amount wasn't high enough. Right afterward, Madeline heads straight to the mayor, since she holds damaging information against him. She speaks without the slightest bit of fear or respect. I want you to take me to the command center. I want full access to the operation. Are you out of your mind? If you agree to this, then we're even. You're unbelievable. At that moment, Police Captain John Hostage informs Keith that, based on the testimony from the released hostages, they only know one thing for certain. There are 4 robbers inside the bank and roughly 50 hostages. The entire area around the bank is now surrounded by sniper teams and dozens of heavily armed SWAT officers. At this point, not even a fly could escape the perimeter. For now, the police decide the safest option is to wait for the robbers to come out and negotiate. If that's what it takes to protect the hostages, then a little extra time is worth it. But inside the bank, the robbers are doing something completely unexpected. Instead of touching the money, they begin clearing out the storage room as if cash means absolutely nothing to them. Not a single dollar inside the vault has been touched. After moving several heavy shelves aside, one of the robbers starts drilling into the floor. Are they planning to dig an escape tunnel? Outside, Keith's investigation reveals that the vehicle used by the robbers was stolen. On top of that, every surveillance camera inside the bank has been disabled using infrared lights. Just as the police run out of ideas, another hostage is suddenly released. This hostage is wearing a steel box chained to his body. The entire police force immediately goes on high alert, especially after realizing the man is Arab. The steel box is quickly taken away and examined to make sure it isn't a bomb. Meanwhile, the bearded hostage is escorted away for questioning. Unfortunately, he provides no useful information at all. Instead, the police discover a written message hidden inside the steel box. Prepare 2 buses for hostage transport and a fully fueled airplane ready for immediate takeoff. Those are the robbers' demands. If the police refuse or fail to comply, the entire bank and every hostage inside will be blown up. Keith's response is simple. There is no need to negotiate. Just because the robbers scribbled demands on a piece of paper doesn't mean the police have to obey them. We've got plenty of time. If they want to play the waiting game, we'll drag this out and see who breaks first. But not long afterward, the robbers unexpectedly come outside on their own. Both sides clearly understand that nobody is about to start a shootout right now. The robbers hand over a single note. Written on it is one simple request. 50 hostages need food. After handing over the note, the robbers head straight back inside the bank. Keith and his team quickly prepare a listening device. They plan to hide the bug inside the food delivery for the hostages and use it to secretly monitor the robbers' next move. Inside the bank, all the hostages have been separated into small groups and locked in different rooms. One man can no longer handle the suffocating atmosphere. Frustrated and terrified, he suddenly snaps. We're probably dead anyway, so why don't we fight back? The other hostages are horrified. Nobody wants to get dragged into his reckless plan. Right in the middle of his speech, the ringleader walks into the room and violently drags the man away by his leg. Someone bold enough to start a rebellion like this has to be punished. But at the same time, the robbers begin wondering if this troublemaker might actually be an undercover cop planted among the hostages. Not long after, bottled water and pizzas are delivered to the front entrance of the bank. Keith hopes to use this opportunity to strike up a conversation while the robbers come outside to collect the food. But the ringleader gives him absolutely nothing. He says nothing, grabs the food, and immediately disappears back inside the bank. Back inside the command vehicle, everyone focuses on the audio coming through the hidden listening device. At first, they assume the robbers are speaking Russian. Ben even brings in an officer who understands Russian, but it quickly becomes obvious that it's another language entirely. Out of options, Keith grabs a loudspeaker and starts asking the crowd of curious bystanders if anyone recognizes the language being spoken. Soon after, a construction worker steps forward and claims he knows what language it is. Once inside the command truck, he explains that it sounds like Albanian because his ex-wife is from Albania. Unfortunately, he only recognizes the language itself. He has no idea what the robbers are actually saying. After hearing this, Keith immediately orders someone to contact the Albanian embassy. But after waiting for a long time, they receive a frustrating answer. The next available translator won't arrive for another month. Furious, Keith forces the construction worker to call his ex-wife instead. Several hours later, the woman finally arrives at the command center after Keith promises to erase more than 200 of her unpaid traffic tickets. The woman agrees to translate the recording, but the second she listens to the audio from the bug device, she almost bursts out laughing. The so-called secret conversation is actually nothing more than an old radio broadcast of an Albanian president's speech from years ago. At that moment, everyone realizes the truth. The robbers have been playing games with the police the entire time, and the prank worked perfectly. While Keith and the police waste valuable time chasing meaningless clues, the robbers inside the bank continue moving the hostages from room to room. After forcing the hostages out into the hallway, the female robber pretends to scream in panic before disguising herself as one of the hostages. This fake hostage is then shoved into another room. Meanwhile, one of the male robbers walks through the different rooms and randomly selects a real female hostage to move somewhere else. By doing this over and over, the robbers completely confuse everyone inside the bank. Most of the customers were strangers to begin with, but now they've all been mixed together so randomly that nobody can tell who is actually a robber anymore. Everyone simply assumes the people being thrown into rooms are fellow hostages. At the same time, the ringleader and his crew finally locate Arthur Case's private safe deposit box. The female robber easily cracks the lock within seconds. Inside the box is a classified file. Beneath the documents are more than a dozen packages filled with diamonds. The value of those diamonds is worth far more than all the cash sitting inside the vault. Meanwhile, the mayor's vehicle arrives outside the bank. As the lead negotiator, Keith steps up to the car. The mayor informs him that Madeline White will now be involved in the operation, though he refuses to explain why. Keith thinks the whole thing sounds ridiculous. Madeline coldly tells him that if he plays along, becoming a detective inspector will no longer be a problem. Even the missing $140,000 from Keith's old case can quietly disappear. Faced with an offer like that, Keith has no real way to refuse. As the hours pass and night falls, the robbers inside the bank dig a massive hole in the floor. But surprisingly, the hole isn't for escaping at all. It's simply being used as a makeshift toilet. While the robbers admire their disgusting masterpiece, Madeline tells Keith to call the ringleader. Who are you? Who I am doesn't matter. What matters is what I can offer you. And what exactly can you offer me? You can protect certain interests. And I can give you something you want. So you work for the bank? No. You're not a cop either. That's right. Send Madeline White inside. With only a few carefully chosen words, Madeline gains permission to enter the bank. In reality, the ringleader already knows she has her own hidden agenda. The two of them talk privately near the teller counters. Madeline gets straight to the point. As long as the robbers don't hurt any hostages and leave the money untouched, she promises to use her political connections to make sure they serve no more than 3 years in prison. And once they get out, they immediately receive a $2 million payoff. For most criminals, that deal would sound almost too good to refuse. But instead of accepting, the ringleader calmly pulls out Arthur Case's secret file. That is, when Madeline discovers the truth. Arthur Case once collaborated with the Nazis during World War II, built an enormous fortune from it, and later used that wealth to create his bank empire. If those documents ever become public, Arthur would be exposed as a war criminal, and his entire family legacy would collapse overnight. With evidence like this in hand, the robbers could demand not just $2 million, but $20 million or even $200 million if they wanted. The moment Madeline sees the file in the robber's possession, she realizes her money and influence mean absolutely nothing here. Continuing the conversation would only humiliate her further. After leaving the bank, Madeline says very little to Keith. She only tells him one thing: the robbers are not going to kill the hostages. The next day, while sitting inside the command vehicle, Keith begins feeling that something about the entire situation is wrong. Up until now, he believed the police needed to stall for time in order to prepare properly. But suddenly, he realizes the opposite may be true. From the very beginning, the robbers are the ones buying time. Take the airplane demand, for example. Whether the police agree or refuse, preparing a plane would still waste hours of police resources and attention. Usually, when robbers ask whether transportation is ready, negotiators respond with something like, "We're still arranging everything. Give us a few more hours." And now Keith realizes that hearing those exact words may have been the robber's real goal all along. That's why Keith suddenly changes tactics. He calls the ringleader and tells him the airplane is ready for departure. However, before anyone moves, Keith demands proof that the hostages are safe. This unexpected response clearly catches the ringleader off guard, but after thinking it over, he agrees to give Keith a chance to come inside the bank and inspect the hostages personally. Keith enters the bank alone. The robbers guide him through room after room, forcing him to check every group of hostages. But the more rooms he enters, the stranger the situation feels. None of the hostages appear seriously injured. In fact, most of them look surprisingly calm. The final room contains the so-called problem hostages who refused to cooperate earlier. After inspecting everyone inside, Keith finds himself completely speechless. The ringleader speaks with extreme caution. "The hostages are fine. Get the airplane ready." Other than that single sentence, he refuses to discuss anything else. That response immediately frustrates Keith. Without warning, he suddenly makes a move, trying to rip off the ringleader's mask to finally see his face. "Do you want to end up in prison or buried in the ground? You'd better decide quickly. You've already pushed this far enough. You crossed the line. The buses are waiting outside. You think I'm bluffing? Just wait and see." Keith's sudden attack almost works, but in the end, he gains absolutely nothing. After returning deeper into the bank, the ringleader and his crew are drenched in sweat. They came dangerously close to having their identities exposed to the police. Luckily for them, it was only a close call. To show his anger, the ringleader calls Keith and orders him to point the cameras outside toward the windows. Then, right in front of everyone, he appears to execute a hostage. Keith completely loses his temper and storms back toward the entrance once again. If even one hostage dies, then his entire operation as negotiator is a total failure. But deep down, Keith already understands something important. The airplane demand was never serious. It was all part of a distraction designed to keep the police chasing the wrong objective. Your plan is unbelievable. You've had us spinning in circles this whole time. You're too smart to be a criminal. Get the hell out. You gonna kill me? Then do it. You already murdered someone, didn't you? Go ahead. Pull the trigger. Faced with Keith's rage, the ringleader simply ignores him. Not long afterward, Police Captain John Darius arrives at the scene. Because Keith acted recklessly and violated protocol, John immediately removes him from duty. From this point on, negotiations are over. Keith officially loses command of the operation. Captain John then immediately begins preparing for a tactical assault. If negotiations are finished, then the only option left is a full-scale armed confrontation. Just as the police are mentally preparing for a violent shootout, Keith has a brief conversation outside with the very first officer who arrived at the scene earlier that day. Suddenly, something clicks in his mind, and he immediately rushes back to the command vehicle. He tears apart the steel box that had been delivered earlier and discovers a hidden listening device inside. That means the robbers have been monitoring the police the entire time. Every strategy, every conversation, even the upcoming assault plan has already been exposed to them. Keith quickly warns Captain John and stops him from leading the tactical team into the bank. Meanwhile, inside the bank, the ringleader gathers his crew and begins the final stage of the operation. The leader tosses several smoke grenades into the hallways. Then the four robbers regroup, confirm the final plan, and split up into different rooms holding the hostages. One by one, they order everyone to come outside. Once all the hostages are released, the robbers disguise themselves among the crowd and blend directly into the stream of terrified civilians. Outside the bank, heavily armed SWAT officers fire rubber bullets at the first people rushing out of the building. Within seconds, the entire scene turns into complete chaos. After realizing the people escaping are not attacking anyone, the police quickly move in and detain every hostage. The officers secure each person one by one. Moments later, large tactical teams storm into the bank itself, searching every corner of the building without missing a single spot. But what do they find? The vault is completely untouched. Not a single dollar is missing. We're still searching. No suspects found yet. No bombs. No escapetanel. No destruction. No stolen cash. At this point, maybe we should be looking for magicians instead. I think you already know the truth. If the robbers didn't fly away or disappear underground, then they must have blended in with the hostages. With that theory in mind, Keith discovers the robbers' weapons hidden inside another room. But the guns turn out to be fake, nothing more than realistic-looking toy guns. Inside the restroom, investigators also discover the fake murder setup. The hostage, who supposedly died earlier, was never actually killed at all. Finally, inside the storage room, police recover piles of hostage clothing. In other words, the 4 robbers somehow walked into the bank, stole absolutely nothing, and then vanished into thin air. Keith refuses to accept the outcome. The police interrogate every single hostage one by one. At this point, they are certain the robbers escaped by blending in with the civilians. But during questioning, they discover a major problem. Every suspicious person has another hostage confirming that they were tied up and trapped beside them the entire time. In other words, the robbers' strategy of constantly moving hostages between rooms and mixing different groups together has made everyone appear innocent. Anyone could be a suspect, but everyone also has an alibi. On top of that, no money was stolen, and Arthur Case chooses not to pursue the matter any further. Most importantly, Keith has absolutely no evidence. Every hostage claims to be a victim, and every hostage backs up someone else's story. As a result, the police captain officially orders the case to be closed. After all the chaos, the investigation appears to have ended in complete failure. But Keith knows just how intelligent the ringleader really is. There is no way someone would plan a bank robbery this elaborate only to walk away with nothing. The entire thing makes no sense. Determined to uncover the truth, Keith begins investigating the bank's records. That's when he discovers something shocking. Since the bank first opened in 1948, there has never been a safe deposit box numbered 392. The numbering jumps directly from 391 to 393. Meanwhile, Madeline White meets privately with Arthur Case and informs him that the classified file is now in the hands of the ringleader. That file is the one thing protecting Arthur's life, while also serving as the perfect weapon for blackmail. However, Madeline realizes the documents were never the robbers' real target. The crew never touched the cash inside the vault. What they truly wanted were the diamonds. Arthur understands that the file probably won't be released publicly anytime soon. Madeline has at least provided him with valuable information. But now she also knows his darkest secret, that he once collaborated with the Nazis during World War II. Because of that, Arthur still has no choice but to pay millions of dollars in hush money. Holding a massive check in her hand, Madeline leaves completely satisfied. But what about the ringleader? The entire time, he has secretly remained hidden inside a sealed compartment built behind the storage room shelves inside the bank. First, he drills a hole in the floor to create a makeshift toilet. Then, through negotiations with the police, he makes sure enough food and water are delivered to keep him alive. Finally, his crew uses tools prepared in advance to build a perfectly concealed wall, completely hiding him from police searches. The bank cares about the money. The police care about the hostages. Arthur cares about the classified documents. But the real target of the robbers has always been the diamonds the size of quail eggs. One full week passes, and the entire situation finally dies down. Hidden behind the fake wall, the ringleader suddenly kicks open a cardboard panel and crawls out, covered in sweat and carrying the stench of a man trapped in a sealed space for days. Outside the bank, several of his accomplices, still disguised as former hostages, are already waiting nearby. But then something unexpected happens. They spot Keith walking toward the bank. The accomplices immediately call the ringleader and warn him that Keith has entered the building. Even after hearing the news, the ringleader refuses to change the plan. Carrying 2 bags in his hands, he calmly walks forward and intentionally bumps into Keith as they pass each other. Nothing suspicious happens. Moments later, the ringleader successfully climbs into his partner's getaway vehicle and disappears without a trace. But before leaving, he decides to leave Keith one final gift. Inside the bank, Keith begins investigating safe deposit box number 392. When he finally opens it, he discovers only a few pieces of chewing gum left behind by the robbers, along with a massive diamond ring hidden inside. Next to it is a handwritten message. Follow the ring. Using the diamond ring as a clue, Keith eventually traces everything back to Arthur Case. This bank was the very first bank Arthur ever opened, and safe deposit box 392 was never officially registered anywhere in the records. That can only mean one thing. The diamond ring is hiding another secret connected to Arthur's past. Keith doesn't stop with Arthur. He also takes the diamond ring directly to Madeline White. This is the business card for the War Crimes Investigation Unit. Now that Keith finally has leverage, he doesn't waste time talking. After making his position perfectly clear, he stands up and leaves the restaurant table. War crimes? What kind of mess have you dragged me into this time? That night, Keith finally returns home. After 2 exhausting days of non-stop chaos, he is finally able to relax and get some real sleep. But as he begins taking off his clothes, he suddenly feels something hidden inside the pocket of his jacket. It's a diamond. And that's where the movie ends. Movie rating, 4 out of 5 stars. The value of a great movie comes from its reputation, but the value of a movie review comes from personal experience and emotion. And that's the end of today's story. Thanks for watching. What do you think about this movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.